The message today is entitled Finding Lost Treasure. And I think we need to have a little time of explanation before we get into the scriptures, because what is happening here is a time frame in Judah's history after David and after Solomon where the kings who followed didn't do as well as they should. In fact, very many of them, they literally did evil in God's sight. And there was so much division that the one nation split between Israel and Judah. And even occasionally did those two sides fight with each other, which is kind of sad. But one of those kings was named a king at 8 years of age. Imagine being 8 years old and being named king, the weight that was on his shoulders. And he was one of the good kings. His name was Josiah. And he came after his father and his grandfather had ruled. And both his father and his grandfather had been evil men who did not follow God and who did not do well in following any of the ways of God's ways. Consequently, the temple had fallen into disrepair. The people were lost and aimless. And basically the place was a mess. And Josiah tried to straighten things out. And in 2 Kings chapter 22, 8 through 20, we get a little bit of a view of what was going on and how he dealt with it. And it says, and Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan, the secretary, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the secretary came to the king and reported to the king, your servants have emptied the money that we found in the house and have delivered it into the hands of the workmen who have been on oversight of the house of the Lord. Then Shaphan the secretary told the king, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read before the king. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest and Achim the son of Jechem, and Eshabor, the son of Mechaliah, and the Shaphan, and I'm telling you what, I'm butchering these names because I didn't look them up. Isaiah the king's servant saying, go inquire of the Lord for me, for the people and all of Judah concerning the words of this book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord is kindled against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book, to do according to all that was written concerning us. So Hilkiah the priest and Achim and Achbar and Shechem and Azia went to Hebiah the prophetess, and the wife of Shelem, the son of Tikvah, and Hezabah, the keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter, and they talked with her. And she said to them, thus saith the Lord of God of Israel, tell the men who sent you to me, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will bring disaster upon this place and upon its inhabitants. All the words of this book that the king of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me and they have made offerings to other gods. They have provoked me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath will be kindled against this place, and it will not be quenched. But to the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, thus shall you say to him, thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, regarding the words you have heard, because your heart is penitent, and you humbled yourself before the Lord, when you heard how I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that you should become a desolation and a curse. You have torn your clothes and wept before me. I have heard you, declares the Lord. Therefore, behold, I will gather you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered in the grave in peace, and your eyes shall not see all the disaster that I will bring upon this place. And they brought back a word to the king. Like I said, an 8-year-old boy, at the time that this was done, when they found the book of the law, he was 26 years old. So he had been king just shy of 20 years. And I think it's important to note that while he didn't understand everything, he tried to do godly things. He tried to be as obedient as he could. But the truth of it is, when you don't have the guidebook, when you don't know how to do it, us men are accused of never wanting to read instructions. And only once we get to a point where things just don't go together will we finally succumb and say, well, I guess I'll get those instructions out and see what they tell me I should have done. And oftentimes, in a case where I've had times where something didn't work, I find that there's a step way back in the beginning that I skipped. This is where Josiah is at. They have been trying to live godly lives. Josiah is trying to do what he thinks is right, and I think he's doing a pretty good job. But until they found the book of the law, he did not realize just how far wrong they were. He had a desire to be right. And I think when you look at his life, you see a man who wanted to do what was right, but he couldn't say for sure just what it was he needed to do, what the law really said. And as I compare Josiah's time to ours, it seems to me that we live in a time where we have a lot of questions. What is right? What is wrong? I hear people all the time telling me, well, God will accept this. Well, God will accept that. And I go, but that's not in his book. That's definitely not what the book of the Bible tells me. And they go, well, that's different. That's different. When you don't have the book of the laws, and the book of the laws is a term that you and I don't use, but for the Jews, it was a book that was literally based on the book of Deuteronomy and literally kind of surrounds the Ten Commandments. Think about the last few decades that you have lived. And we don't have any children here, so you've all been around for at least 2 or 3 decades. And the one thing you've probably heard about the Ten Commandments, can't have it here, can't have it there, can't have it here, don't want that religious stuff here. There has been a severe attack on the Ten Commandments. And I guess I have to ask myself, why? Is there something within the Ten Commandments that actually teaches bad things? Something that's wrong or hurtful? In fact, the exact opposite is true. If you look at not only our country, but every country in the in the world today, some form of the Ten Commandments make up their basic principle laws. The principles behind the Ten Commandments have been right and correct throughout all of time, ever since God gave them to us. Now, the fact that there is so much attack on the Ten Commandments suggests to me that there are people who don't want to follow those Ten Commandments. And I will tell you that Satan is one of the people that wants to get rid of those Ten Commandments very quickly. He would prefer you never read that part of the Bible. He would prefer that you forget that exists. Because if he can get rid of that, he can also get rid of all the other things that goes with you. Satan is deceitful and he's a liar. And he has been lying and deceiving ever since day one with Adam and Eve. What Satan tried to tell Adam and Eve is what God said isn't completely true. God says you will die if you eat of the forbidden fruit. Oh, you won't die? That was a lie. But Adam and Eve fell for it. If the Ten Commandments tells me that it's wrong to murder, and the world says, that's an old law, and it doesn't apply to certain things, then perhaps that shouldn't apply in this situation, then I can suddenly start justifying murder or coveting or any number of things that the Ten Commandments tell me God does not like. There is no question that there are many people today that want to eliminate the Ten Commandments from your mind. There is no question that there are many, many people living lives separate from those value systems. In Josiah's time, his father and his grandfather were exactly that. They rejected God, they worshiped idols, they did what was evil in the sight of God. And the Bible is very clear. They found eternal punishment for that. I just preached at a funeral service this Friday, and one of the things I mentioned was hell. and I had a gal step up to me and says, I don't hear hell talked about much in a funeral anymore. And I said, that's true. It's not, because we'd like to avoid that topic. But the reality is, as Christians, we have to be acknowledging that there is, in fact, a hell. There is a punishment coming for those who do not. And unfortunately, that punishment is not only just for those individuals, but it plays down even into the next generations. As you read through 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you see time and time again where the father and the grandfather affected the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that seems unfair that their sin should overlap into their children and grandchildren's sin. And in fact, some people will say that's God's judgment. And I will disagree with that. It's more of a learned behavior. I'm an ex-cop. I spent a lot of years, in police work. And one of the things I ended up doing a lot in the 1970s was breaking up bar fights. Those were pretty fun things to do, especially when I was 21 and young and didn't get hurt as easy as I do now. But at 21 years of age, I was always breaking up bar fights, and it always seemed to involve the same group of people. And the funny part of it was that I was in law enforcement long enough to watch those people grow up and, like me, get a little older and figure out that bar fighting wasn't as much fun as it was 10, 15 years ago. When they woke up hurting the next morning, they suddenly decided maybe bar fighting wasn't their way of living. And then they started to mellow out, and they stopped being the bar fighters that I was dealing with. But the irony was, without any training, without any instruction, their children started into the bars about that time. And I suddenly found myself fighting the children of the guys that I used to fight. And at that point, I was starting to realize this is a losing situation because I'm getting older and they're not. But the truth of it is, what happened is those men's sin followed down to their children. They didn't have to say, here's how you go in and start a bar fight. They learned that through just being around, just absorbing it through incidental things. They never took a class. They never understood that they were in fact following in their parents' footsteps. It just was the natural progression of sin. And unfortunately, that sin takes place in all of our lives. When sin is in our lives and we are not aware of it, when we are not made aware that this is wrong, then we allow it to continue, and we continue to allow things to go down. The book of the laws, when Josiah discovered it, he had not had a lot of theological training. He could have dismissed that as quaint history. He could have said, well, that was them, this was us. We're not really liable for it. But what Josiah seemed to understand, even at his young age, was that there's a judgment coming. Because of what my grandfather and my father have done, and my people of this nation have done, we are ready to be punished. And he was correct. They were slated for destruction. The word that came back to him was, that is already on the books. It's already in plan. It's already in play. In fact, had Josiah not repented, I think it probably would have happened in his time. Josiah did repent. He did call his people back to repentance. And there was a revival under Josiah to follow God, to do right, to follow the book of the law. And one would think, well, gee, then everything got changed and everything was better, right? But you haven't read your Old Testament if you think that, because what we see all the time through the Old Testament is people suffer, people find God, and then the people cry out and God delivers them. And then before you can turn the page, the people have rejected God again. So it was in Josiah's time. Josiah died when the Egyptians came to destroy them. With Josiah's death, the people fell back into sin. Josiah's son took over and frankly, the people fell back into sin and fell under the judgment of God, and they were, in fact, punished and destroyed. You and I today live in a time where they will tell you that this Bible no longer holds value. And some people we don't have to argue that with, because the sad truth is, I told you the statistics before, that there's like 5 to 6 Bibles in every home, and almost every one of them is covered with dust. They're not used. We have lost the book of the law, not because we don't know where it's at, because we've forgotten that it was important. We have forgotten that it was necessary as my walk with the God develops. We have forgotten that it is part of my Christian experience to look at that book, to learn from that book, and to hear what it has to say. We are, in fact, at a time just like Josiah, where we have lost the treasure book of God. Not through clutter, which is what Josiah's situation was. The temple was in disrepair. The book got buried under a pile of stuff, and nobody even knew it was there until they discovered it. No, our Bibles sit on our shelves willingly, ignored, because we don't have time. Because it's confusing. Because, well, it's an old book. What does it have to tell me today? Any number of thousands of excuses why we should not open the cover of a book that is the book to tell us how to live and how not to live. I will tell you right now, Josiah's nation suffered because they refused to repent, because they refused to follow God's law. We are in a time where I wonder whether our nation is not that far from that exact situation. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't take much watching any news. It doesn't take much of understanding where we're at. We are living in a nation that is $30 trillion in debt. I'm sorry to tell you, friends, but if you've balanced a checkbook, 30 trillion in debt is not a place you want to be if you want to survive financially. We are morally corrupt. We have literally said there are no rules, there is no truth. We have literally come to a point where we have rejected every principle of the Bible because it's not convenient, because it's not tolerant in some people's mindsets. We have rejected the truth and instead accepted a lie. In Josiah's world, that put them on a road for destruction. In the world of 2022, where you and I live, my friends, we are no less susceptible to that same fate. We are not following God. We have not been following God. And unless we turn around as a people, as a nation, we will in fact suffer that entire change. And I'm going to be telling you the truth. I'm not an optimist when it comes to the future of this nation. I see so much bad and negative. I see so much willingness to reject God that I really don't know if that can be turned around. Now, I will suggest to you that Josiah's time was equally as bleak. It was equally as bad. And the only thing that changed was a king that said, my God, how bad have we been? His emotion was so strong, he ripped his clothes. He knew that we were sinning and said, this is wrong, and we deserve to be punished for this. And God, what can we do to be forgiven? I don't see that attitude in the church. I don't see that in our nation. I don't see that attitude in individuals where it needs to be. If we want to turn this around, it's going to require each and every one of us to become that type of repentant individual. We have a lost treasure. And that lost, my back. That lost treasure sits on our shelves collecting dust. It takes away from the fact that I am so busy watching my TV shows or going to games or doing whatever I do that I don't have time for this book. And if I do read this book, I find it quickly disagrees with everything the world tells me. And so rather than wrestle through which is right and which is wrong, I'll just take the easy road because everybody else agrees that this book is outdated. I can tell you how many churches you can walk in today, and the pastor will sit there and go, "Don't open that Bible. It's an outdated book. It is long since past its usefulness. Oh, there's a few gems in there that we can quote from now and then, and they're okay. But overall, this book has outlived its usefulness." You can hear that preached from a pulpit. I assure you, friends, you'll never hear it from me. This book is the Word of God, without any error, without any flaws. It is the instruction manual as to how you and I should live. And if we ignore it at our peril. Josiah understood that and repented. The question I have is, will we do the same? There is still time. Just like Josiah, we can sit here and look at the world, and like I said, Wednesday was a beautiful event. It would come together, and we started out by lamenting all the problems in our community, all the things that are going wrong in this community, from the drugs to the crime to the divisions. We looked at that and we said, yes, Lord, this is terrible. This needs to be addressed. We need to lament. We need to say, wrong. But if we leave it there, we fail. We have to get these books off our shelves. We have to start reading them, and we have to start using them. This book will guide your life. It will clear up your perception of what is right and what is wrong. But my friends, the time is running short, and if we don't do it soon, we will find ourselves like the people of Judah after Josiah's death, being overrun and destroyed. And remembering the days when we used to be a strong nation, remembered when we could worship God freely. There's a lot of places in this world where what we are doing right here is illegal. Where you come to this place and say the word of God, you will be arrested and very possibly killed. Places that you can go to any day of the week now. China, Malaysia, even Russia to some degree still. Many places in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, one of our allies, won't allow you to worship God. You cannot go into those countries and do what we are doing here, because Satan has already conquered them. He is working to conquer this country, and unless you and I choose to look at this book, turn back to God, we too will fall in those footsteps. Grave warning, but a warning that I give you plenty of time to resolve. Like Josiah, let us say, it is time to get off of my seat and get into my Bible. It is time to start realizing what is true and what is not. And I base that off my Bible, not off my politicians. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.